This story is called The Golden Bird, and it was written by the Grimm's brothers. It's a Grimm's fairy tale. Once there was a king who had a beautiful garden. In his garden there was a tree which produced golden apples. Each night the apples were counted, and the king discovered that every night one of the apples was stolen. The king became very angry at this and ordered the gardener to keep watch all night under the tree. The gardener put his eldest son to watch, but about 12 o'clock he fell asleep. In the morning, another one of the apples was missing. Then the gardener had his second son stay up and watch the tree at night. At midnight, he also fell asleep. In the morning, another apple was gone. Then the gardener's third son offered to watch the tree overnight. This time, the gardener at first would not let him. He was afraid something bad would happen to his youngest son. Finally, he decided to let him stand watch over the tree. The young man laid himself under the tree to watch. As the clock struck 12, he heard a rustling sound in the air. Suddenly, a bird came flying. The bird looked like it was made out of pure gold. It started snapping at one of the golden apples with its beak. The gardener's son jumped up and shot an arrow at the bird, but the arrow did not hurt the bird at all. It only dropped a golden feather from its tail and then flew away. The golden feather was brought to the king in the morning. He called all his advisors together. Everyone agreed that the golden feather was worth more than all the wealth of the kingdom. The king thought about this and said, "One feather is of no use to me. I must have the whole bird." The gardener's oldest son thought it would be an easy thing to find the bird, so he went out to look for it. He started walking deeper and deeper into the woods, where he came upon a fox sitting in the middle of a clearing. He took out his bow and got ready to shoot at it. The fox suddenly started speaking to him. He said, "Do not shoot me. I will give you good advice. I know what you are doing and that you are looking for the golden bird. If you keep traveling down this path, you will get to a village in the evening. When you get there, you will see two hotels opposite each other. One of them is very pleasant and beautiful to look at. Do not go in there. Instead, spend the night in the other one, though it might look to you to be very poor and cheap." The oldest son thought to himself, "What could an animal like this know about anything?" So he raised his bow and shot his arrow at the fox. Luckily for the fox, he missed it. The fox lifted its tail and ran into the woods. The oldest son continued his journey. In the evening, he got to the village where the two hotels were. In one of these hotels, there were people singing and dancing and having a great time. The other hotel looked dirty and poor. "I would be very silly," he said, "if I went to that cheap hotel and left this charming place." So he went into the fancy hotel and ate and drank and forgot all about the golden bird and the king and about his family too. Time passed and the oldest son did not come back. No one heard any news of him. So the second son decided to go out to look for his brother and the golden bird. On his journey, the same thing happened to him. He also met the fox, who gave him good advice and told him not to stay in the fancy hotel, but to go into the poor one. But when he got to the two hotels, his oldest brother was standing at the window. He could see there was a big party going on. and his brother was calling him to come inside. He could not resist the temptation. It looked like so much fun. He also went into the fancy hotel and soon forgot all about the golden bird and the king and his family in the same way his brother had. More time passed, and there was no word of either of the two brothers. So the youngest son decided to go out into the wide world to look for his brothers and for the golden bird. For a long time, his father would not listen to him because he loved his youngest son very much and was afraid to lose him. But finally, in the end, he had to let him go because the youngest son would not give up. He went out, and as he came to the woods, he also met the fox and also heard the same good advice. This son was not like his brothers. He was thankful to the fox and did not try to kill him the way his other brothers had done. The fox saw this and said, "Sit on my tail, and I will take you to where you need to go." So he sat down, and the fox began to run, and away they went through the woods so fast that their hair whistled in the wind. When they got to the village, the son followed the fox's advice. Without looking around him, he went to the poor hotel and stayed there all night. In the morning came the fox again and met him as he was beginning his journey. He said, "Go straight forward until you get to a castle. In front of it, there is a whole troop of soldiers fast asleep and snoring. Don't pay attention to them. Go into the castle and pass on and on until you get to a room where the golden bird sits in a wooden cage. Close by it, there is a beautiful golden cage. Do not try to take the bird out of the shabby cage and put it into the fancy one. If you do, you will be sorry." Then the fox stretched out his tail again, and the young man sat down, and away they went, through the woods and over the hills, until their hair whistled in the wind. In front of the castle gate, everything was just as the fox said it would be. So the son went in and found the chamber where the golden bird hung in a wooden cage, and below stood the golden cage, and the 3 golden apples that had been lost were lying close by it. Then he thought to himself, "It doesn't make sense to take away such a beautiful bird in this ugly cage." So he opened the cage door and took out the bird and put it into the golden cage. But the bird screamed so loud that all the soldiers woke up. They took him prisoner and brought him before the king. The next morning, he was taken to the court to stand judgment. They listened to his story, and at the end, they sentenced him to die. He promised he would find the horse and begged to be allowed to go out once more to search. So he set out again on his journey, sighing and in great despair, when all of a sudden his friend the fox met him. The fox saw him and said, "You see now what has happened because you did not want to take my advice. Even so, I will help you find the golden horse, but you have to promise that you will do everything I tell you to. You must go straight on until you come to the castle where the horse stands in his stall. By his side will lie the groom fast asleep and snoring. Take away the horse quietly, but be sure to put the old leather saddle on him and not the golden one that is close by it." Then the son sat down on his fox's tail, and away they went through the woods and over the hills. Everything went well, and the groom lay snoring with his hand on the golden saddle. But when the youngest son looked at the horse, He thought it would be such a shame to put the leather saddle on it. "I will give him the good one," he said. "I am sure he deserves it." As he was taking the golden saddle to put it on the horse, the groom woke up and cried out so loud that all the guards ran in and took him prisoner. In the morning he was again brought before the court to be judged, and was again sentenced to die. But it was agreed that if he could find and bring the beautiful princess that the king was in love with to his kingdom, he would be allowed to live, and the king would grant him the bird and the horse to keep as his own. Then he went his way very sorrowfully. But the old fox came and said, "Why didn't you listen to me? If you had, you would have carried away both the bird and the horse. Still, will I once again give you some good advice. Go straight on, and in the evening you will arrive at a castle. At 12 o'clock at night, the princess goes up to her bedroom in the tower. Go up to her and give her a kiss, and she will let you lead her away. But take care not to let her go say goodbye to her father and mother." Then the fox stretched out his tail, and so away they went, through the woods and over the hills. As they came to the castle, everything was the way the fox had said. At 12 o'clock, the young man met the princess as she was going to her bedroom in the tower. He stopped her and gave her the kiss. She immediately agreed to run away with him, but begged him through her tears to let her say goodbye to her father. At first he refused, but she cried and fell at his feet until at last he consented. But the moment she went into her father's chambers, the guards woke up, and he was taken prisoner again. Then he was brought before the princess's father, the king of that realm, and he said, "You shall never have my daughter, unless in 8 days you dig away the hill that stops the view from my window." Now this hill was so big that the whole world could not take it away. And when he had worked for 7 days and had done very little, the fox came and said, "Lie down and go to sleep. I will work for you." And in the morning he awoke, and the hill was gone. So he went merrily to the king and told him that now that it was removed, he must give him the princess. Then the king was obliged to keep his word, and away went the young man and the princess, and the fox came and said to him, "We will have all three, the princess, the horse, and the bird." "Oh," said the young man, "that would be a great thing, but how can we contrive it?" "If you will only listen," said the fox, "it can be done. When you come to the king and he asks for the beautiful princess, you must say, 'Here she is.' Then he will be very happy. You will mount the golden horse that they are to give you, and put out your hand and say goodbye to each of them, but shake hands with the princess last. Then lift her quickly onto the horse behind you, clap your spurs to his side, and gallop away as fast as you can." Everything went just as the fox had said. Then the fox said, "When you come to the castle where the bird is, I will stay with the princess at the door, and you will ride in and speak to the king. When he sees that it is the right horse, he will bring out the bird. But you must sit still and say that you want to look at it to see whether it is the true golden bird. And when you get it into your hand, right away." This too happened as the fox had said. They carried off the bird, the princess mounted again, and they rode on to a great wood. Then the fox came and said, "Pray, kill me. and cut off my head and my feet." But the young man refused to do it. So the fox said, "I will at any rate give you good advice. Beware of two things. Ransom no one from the gallows, and sit down by the side of no river." Then away he went. "Well," thought the young man, "it's not a great thing to keep that advice." He rode on with the princess till at last he came to the village where he had left his two brothers. And there he heard a great noise and uproar. And when he asked what was the matter, the people said, "Two men are going to be hanged." As he came nearer, he saw that the two men were his brothers, who had turned into robbers. And he said, "Can't they be saved in any way?" But the people said no, unless he would bestow all his money upon these rascals and buy their liberty. Then he did not stay to think about the matter, but paid what was asked, and his brothers were given up and went with him towards home. And as they came to the wood where the fox first met them, it was so cool and pleasant that the two brothers said, "Let us sit down by the side of the river and rest a while, to eat and drink." So he said yes, and forgot the fox's counsel, and he sat down by the side of the river. And while he suspected nothing, they came behind him and threw him down the bank, and took the princess, the horse, and the bird, and went home to the king, their master, and said, "All this we have won by our labor." Then there was great rejoicing, but the horse would not eat, and the bird would not sing, and the princess cried and cried. The youngest son fell into the river. Luckily, it was nearly dry, but his bones were almost broken, and the bank was so steep that he could find no way to get out. Then the old fox came once more and scolded him for not following his advice. Otherwise, no evil would have befallen him. Yet he said, "I cannot leave you here. So grab a hold of my tail and hold on." Then he pulled him out of the river and said to him as he got to the bank, "Your brothers are looking out for you because they want to kill you. And if they find you in the kingdom, they will." So he got dressed up as a poor man and came secretly into the king's court, and was barely in the door when the horses began to eat and the bird began to sing, and the princess stopped crying. Then he went to the king and told him everything that his brothers had done, and they were captured and punished. And he had the princess given to him again. And after the king's death, he was the heir to the kingdom. A long while after, he went to walk one day in the woods, and the old fox met him and asked him with tears in his eyes to kill him and cut off his head and his feet. And at last he did so. And in a moment, the fox changed into a man and turned out to be the brother of the princess, who had been lost a great many years ago. And they all lived happily ever after.